Hello everyone, this is Professor Maloney, and today I'm going to create a video recording to demonstrate Microsoft Access. Okay, Microsoft Access is the largest, most widely used database application in the world. And so what is a database and why are databases important in this class? Well, so this is an introduction to computers class, and we don't provide a lot of detail in any of the topics in the class, but we try to provide an overview on Microsoft Office applications because they are the most widely used software applications in the world in terms of businesses. All right. One application in the Office suite that's not as widely used, but is still the #1 application for databases in the world is Microsoft Access. And Access is in the professional version, or in your case, Office 365 Pro Plus version of the Office suite. However, for Mac users, unfortunately, you do not get Microsoft Access as part of the Office for the Mac suite. The reason is Apple and Microsoft could not come to an agreement to allow Apple to get a copy of Microsoft Access as part of their, the agreement they have with Office for the Mac being provided basically by Microsoft, but to Apple. So as a result, in this class, and because I'm the lead faculty for NTech in all of the, in the Homestead campus, that is, so I made the decision that we're not going to be using Microsoft Access projects. So this is the only Office application. Again, we're talking Word, Excel, and PowerPoint as the other three, where we're not going to have projects. Okay, and you actually don't get as much time on Microsoft Access in this class either. Part of the reason is, of course, again, because it is an introduction and we're only providing the overview. I'm also not giving you projects. Okay, if this was a face-to-face class at the Homestead campus, I would still give you projects because then you're in front of me, you're working in D307, D308, or D309, and all of the computers in those computer labs have Microsoft Access on them so that students could do the work there. And also, of course, if it's a face-to-face class, students can also go down to the Learning Resources Center and work on Microsoft Access down there. So anyway, so what I'm going to do today in this overview video, this is not the overview where I demonstrate the modules, the training modules. I'll be doing that in the next video. But for this one, I'm going to build, in effect, I'm going to build a project. Right? I'm just going to build a database application. It won't be a difficult one, but it will give you, hopefully, a decent understanding of what's involved in creating a database application and what we do with databases. Okay, so first of all, of course, I need to have some of my coffee. Sorry about that. I need to have some of my coffee, otherwise it's going to get cold. I'll have 2 or 3 sips before I do my work, okay? Okay, I also need to oil my chair. Oh, well. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot of different types of databases, but so anytime you log into mdc.blackboard.com, you're actually going in with what? Your credentials, your login credentials. So that means your student ID and a password. To get verification of your student ID and your password, mdc.blackboard.com hooks up with a database, and the database has lots and lots of tables associated with it. And we have a table specifically for login credentials. So it has a username, it has your student ID, and it has your password. If you put in good information, then you're sent over to Blackboard. You go into where you see your classes. If you provide bad information, It'll say try again. You know, the username you entered or the password you entered, the email address, whatever it is that you use on your entry was wrong, and you can try again. In the case of students at MDC, rather than just like give you 3 tries and then keep you locked out for a day or two, if you get 3 bad tries, you're locked out for 15 minutes and then you can try again. But anyway, so that's all tied in with the database, okay? And then when you're given permission to get in, I mentioned also that you go to Blackboard where you see a list of your classes. Well, that's another table, or it could even be another database, but it's all database driven, okay? So anything that deals with data, for the most part in the world, is stored in databases. Obviously, we just went through Excel, and I mentioned to you that Excel is extremely important in the business world. It's for sure number 1 in the business world. Access might be number 2, but both are hugely important no matter the business. Very, very, very important. All right. So today what I'm going to do is start creating a little database. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about some of the properties, some of the features, and some of the anomalies, some of the weird things with using Microsoft Access. One of which is everything, like once you create a database, okay, rather than most applications, it just lets you work. The first thing it does is it makes you save the file. So you have to save the database before you do anything. And then you're brought to a page where you have a table 1. And tables are, they're like nouns. If you think about it in the English speaking world, well, I mean, nouns in languages, okay? So a noun is what? A person, a place, or a thing. And things that describe the noun are adjectives, okay? So we have adjectives that describe nouns. We also have, of course, verbs and adverbs that describe verbs. And what is a verb? A verb is an action. It's something you're doing. So when we're dealing with databases, we try to tie them in with basically, you know, English or Spanish or French. But I mean, in terms of the using nouns, using adverbs, using adjectives, and using verbs. We also want to make sure everyone understands what the whole point is. The difference between Excel, where if I want to, remember I showed you there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of columns in any given Excel workbook, literally hundreds of thousands if need be. So in Access, you might say, well, why not store all that? Well, I haven't even explained anything to you yet, but one thing some people say after they get the overview session is, well, you know, so why do we have to have so many tables? Even though I'm only going to be demonstrating 3 tables, but why can't we just have a large table and put everything in? And I'll talk about the fact that logically, it just doesn't make sense. Like if you're thinking about going to a store and buying, you know, an order, if you have an order, just like if you have a class list, just like if you have any information on you as a person or your favorite best vacation destinations. It's a matter of if you have 1 thing or 100 things. And we don't want a table to go on indefinitely from left to right, meaning in columns, and you'd never be able to relate information together. So what we do is try to store information in the smallest component possible, meaning we create tables that in some cases only have even 1 field, literally, could be 1 column. Others 2 columns, others 3, 4, 5, others 10 or 15 or 20, but not too many of them have a bunch of information. And then what we do is we relate tables. So we relate, let's say, a classes table to a students table. And then we want to tie the students into particular classes. And then that's what we call a join table. So that we call students classes. We could also have a grades table. And then we could have students grades. From the professor's perspective, we could have class grades and then professor's grades or professor's classes with his or her grades. So there's just tons and tons of things we can do, and it's just a lot of work. But this is going to be a nice, easy demonstration, and hopefully you'll learn quite a bit from it. And I'll talk to you in class soon. All right, so I'm going to take my picture away and share my screen. All right, now I need to drink a couple bits of my coffee again. It's already almost, it's almost ice cold. Oh well. All right, so what I'm going to do here first is just go to a session. I don't want anyone to see which session I'm in. It doesn't matter. So now I'm just going to go down here and type access in my search box. And that's an application, software application. All right, I want to make a blank database. See, it immediately asks me to name it, okay? And I'm going to say access example database, and I'll put DB for database, okay? I'll let it go to my document so that no one sees which class I'm in for this one. Not that it matters, obviously, because it's just an introduction to Access. Okay, so Access has two primary views for tables, okay? One is datasheet view, and one is design view. Datasheet view is where we're actually putting in records, okay? Design view is where we're modifying records, adding properties and features to records. Even though technically you can use the datasheet view, which is the view I'm currently in. How do I know that? I can click my view button here, down arrow, and you see datasheet view has that little pinkish, maybe, or orangey pinkish, whatever background around that little table area, and design view does not. So I'm in the datasheet view. I normally create my databases in the design view, but it doesn't really matter. But right now, what I'm on is table 1, and a table is, again, supposed to be the smallest bit of information on a given noun. So again, my tables will be like students, classes, and students' classes. So in other words, I'm just pretending that I'm creating a little database that would work at MDC. Well, this database will not work for MDC, you know, obviously, because it would just be voluminous. It would take me months, literally, to put it all together. But it'll just demonstrate the thoughts. All right, down to about a third of my coffee left. So what I'm going to first do is go over to design view, okay? And then I'm going to put in the fields I want to use, all right? So I'm going to click on view, and all it's going to then do is say, uh-oh, you have a table named table 1. We want you to save that. So I already have a database. You can see up here at the top, maybe you can see it. It says access example DB. And its file extension, by the way, is a .accdb, just like Excel is XLSX. Word is DOCX, PowerPoint is PPTX, right? But in a database and Access, it's ACCDB. ACC for Access and DB for database, all right? So, but anyway, this is a table. Again, the smallest basic component of information is stored in tables. So I shall say this one is called classes, okay? And I'll say okay. And now over on the left side, which is my all access objects area, I have one table and it's called classes. Now, one thing that databases, well, relational database management systems, of which Microsoft Access is one, is that they use primary keys. So anytime you add a new table to any Access database, if you start in design view, you'll see a little key. That's a key just to the right now of that. Well, let me just go under where the top arrow is pointing at that top row there. That is a key, okay? And if you look up here, it's called primary key. And here you can see the key shape better, okay? So that's a key. For classes, like normally we use class codes, like CGS 1060C, CGS 2108 as a couple of the classes I'm teaching this term. COP 1334 when I teach C++. Classes like that. But I'm going to just put down in here quite a few classes, but I'm not going to do that until I put the design features together. So I'm just going to have basically a class code. So I'm going to call here a class code, all right? And for this one, I don't want to use auto number. Auto number means Microsoft Access will generate the number for me, which means I would never put the number in, okay? But that's if it's using auto number. I'm going to use here, I want a number, but not really a number. I just want it to be text. Like I'm going to have, again, CGS 1060 or CGS 2108 or MAT 1033, or SPC, I think it's 1117 for speech, you know, things like that. All right. So I'm going to use short text, and I'm going to put over here on that in the description area. One more sip and it should be done. I'm going to call this primary key for classes table. Okay. So I mentioned that Microsoft Access is a relational database management system. So it stands, it's RDBMS. R for relational, D for data, B for base, M for management, and S for system. All right. So relational database management system. If you're using that kind of system, you're using what we call SQL. And SQL is structured query language. Because basically what we're doing is we're storing data, and we want to use queries. And queries are questions. So we want to use queries to ask questions on the database content if we're looking for information, because you could have millions and millions of characters of fields for data in a database. Microsoft Access is restricted to about 2 gigabytes of data, of file size for any given database. Microsoft SQL Server, you can have hundreds of millions, okay, fields in a table. And you can have data that's stored in the hundreds of millions of megabytes, gigabytes, okay? Then there's Oracle. Oracle is the largest relational database management system out there. And with Oracle, there is no cap on the largest amount of data you can store in one file. In other words, if you have enough data to store, Oracle can store it. That's literally a fact of life. But some of these Oracle databases cost companies $100,000 or more a month for maintenance upkeep by Oracle, because it's just a, I think I used the term voluminous a little while ago, but it's just tons and tons and tons and tons of data, okay? All right, sorry about that. Now I'm done with my coffee. All right, so class code will be our primary key, okay? And short text means I can use letters or numbers as part of the name, all right? And I'm saying it's primary key for the classes table, all right? So that, and then I want class name. And by the way, normally in databases, we do not put spaces between, like if it's 2 words, like in these 2 cases. I could have done class underscore code, or I could have done class underscore name, or I could have done class dash code or class dash name, or I could have done class space code or class space name. But normally we don't like to use spaces because most of the data in databases is text or string, and string fields need to be delimited with quote marks. If you have 2 words for the string, then you have that put quote marks around both. If you have just 1, then it's 1 set of double quote marks. So it just makes the data organization and data building easier if you don't put spaces. All right. So class name is also going to be short text. I can click down here and change the data type. But basically the way, when you're in the design view, the first one is always going to come out as primary key, and it's by default going to say auto number. Once you do that first one, whether you change it or not, like I changed it to short text, every new field I put will automatically default to short text, but I don't have to use short text. I can use long text. So short text, basically if you're putting in less than 512 bytes of data, long text if you're putting in more than 512 bytes of data, basically. Number is for numbers that go, that really they're huge, but large number would be like huge, meaning the population of China or more, right? So numbers, you can be in the millions, you can be in the hundreds of millions. Large number is even larger, okay? Date and time, if you want to use date and time. And, you know, we can use currency, we can use the auto number, which you saw. Yes, no fields are big because they're true, false. I mentioned true, false, I think earlier in this class. Just they're called Boolean values. Something has to either be true or it has to be false. But anyway, and then there will be a calculated field, lookup wizards when we're wanting to be using a field to look up data that you're going to then use for that field. So there's a lot of data types, but not too many. All right. Okay. So class name, And I don't need to put a description for it. You see, it is optional, but just for you guys to at least let you know. So I'll just say class name, right? Meaning I'll just put the space there, all right? And that's all I need for this table, all right? So I'm just going to populate it with class codes and class names, all right? But I want to show you some of the properties and things we can do with the properties. First of all, on a primary key, okay, I never allow I don't ever put any features down here, any things at all. But on this one here, I will restrict the field size. I'll put the field size because CGS 1060C is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters. I don't think there are any class codes at MDC that take more than 8 class codes, 8 characters. But I'll put 10 just to put 10. And the reason I'm changing it from 255 is because the default field size is automatically used when the file is saved. And remember I said that for Access databases, the most data you can store, the largest file size, in other words, for it is a 2 gigabyte file. And if you're using 255 bytes, that's tiny. But if you get, let's say, 1,000 fields of that one field name, then that's 1,000 times 255. And when you only need 10 or even less, then you're just wasting a lot of storage. Okay, so for class code down here, okay, this one 255. Again, this one though, because a lot of times, like the class two of the classes I'm teaching this term, Introduction to Computers and Applications and Advanced Desktop Applications. So both of those have a lot of characters, right? But they're not 255 characters. I would say changing this to about 50 is the way to go. But I'll leave it at 55. I just deducted, took away the 200 part and left the 55. Okay. All right. So that's one field size we play with a lot, or one property of fields that we play with a lot, the field size. I'm going to show you a few others that I normally would use and that you're going to be using in this class. So caption is if you're wanting to put a field differently on the datasheet view than you are in design view. So this is design view, which means the real field is called class code with no space and class name with no space. But if I put as a caption for the class name one, I do this, I type class and then a space name. Okay, now the caption is class name, but when I go to datasheet view to input records, we'll then see class name rather than class name with no space. Okay, it just is a caption property, is all it means. All right. Default value is sometimes you want a certain value to pop up when you're using that particular field. Like if it's a Boolean value, you may want to have false or no pop up. Okay, if it's a let's say it's a zip code field, and if you're primarily working in, let's say, around Homestead, maybe 33030 is a good default zip code, but you're allowed to then change it if need be. Same with, let's say it's a city, okay, and I'm putting city in my students table, which is going to be the next table I build. So if I put a default city like Homestead, that just means that I expect more people to type Homestead in the field called city. So why not give it a default value of Homestead? That way those students don't need to change the city, and other students of course would have to change it, right? So it's just things that might or might not make your job easier. All right, validation rules and validation text are things you want to do if you're having to do something based on you're preventing certain information from being entered into a field. Like if this was a sales an inventory or a price field or whatever, we might want to put a cap on the highest price just in case somebody made a mistake and put something in that was wrong. Like meaning, let's say if this is a store and the store never has any products that cost over $100, but one is listed as $3,999. Most likely it was supposed to be $39.99 or maybe $399.99, but somebody put an extra 9 on the name or in the field. Okay, so you can put things like that. required is very important for certain things. So a required field means you must enter data in this field, okay? So for the class name, for sure, I want to require students to put it in. So if they don't put something in, then Access will quote unquote bark at them. In other words, they'll say it'll stop the program when you're in the datasheet view inputting records, and it'll automatic message will pop up saying you need to input something in this field, meaning it's a required field, okay? And normally if you require something, then you change the allow zero length to no. Because allow zero length, if it's yes, it means you can enter blanks. And that doesn't make sense with required. So these two go together, but in an opposite way. So if it's no for required, then it would be yes for allow zero length. If it's yes for required, it should be no for allow zero length. Okay, so that's enough of those for now. So I'll just go ahead and hit my save. Now I want to put in some records, meaning some classes. Okay, so I click on my view button. If I click the down arrow now, you'll see that it's on design view. You see the orangey, pinkish, whatever color is around design view. So I want to go back to datasheet view. If I did not save what I had done, it would then prompt me to save it before it would let me come over to this view. All right. Now in this view, I can make things larger. So I'll make it 18. 18 to make it easier on you. But unfortunately, in the design view in Access, I can't change the field sizes to make it easier for you to see things. So now I have class code. Remember this one I did not change with a caption. The class name, which has no space in its real name. It's class name with no space. But I told you if I put a caption, when I get back to datasheet view, which is where I am now, again, if I go down here, you'll see datasheet view is the one that's selected again. See, it's got that pinkish border. Okay. And so I just want to make sure I'm putting some of these things in now. All right. Okay. So I'm going to put in classes like CGS1060C. Okay. Class. I'll just say, I won't make them the right, but I'll say introduction to computers. Okay. Remember, I restricted that to 55. So if I really typed out duction 2, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9 for duct, and then 10, 11, 12 for the ion part. So 12, and then a space 13, 2 more 14, 15, another space 16, these 4, 20, these 4, 24. That'd be 25 if I had it as introduction to computers. But technically the class is called Introduction to Computers ampersand applications, right? And a lot of classes have lots and lots of words. But anyway, so that, okay? And then I'll put CGS 2108. So these are the, two of the classes I'm teaching this term. And this is advanced desktop applications, okay? And I put MAT 103.33. And I think this is, I forget if this is college algebra here or not, but anyway, so I'm going to put it as today. And SPC, I said 1117, I believe, it may not be. And I'll just say intro to speech. Okay, and now let's put English, ENC 1101. Let's call this one English 1. Okay, I want to make 10 classes. Okay, I don't need to make 10, but I'm going to make 10, and I'm going to put 10 students as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's see if I can come up with more. There's also ENC 1102. Okay, and that's English 2, I guess. And then in other things that I teach, there are CGS 1560, and this is A+ operating systems. And there's CTS 1131, and this is A+ hardware. Okay, and there's COP 1334. This is intro to C++ programming. Okay, that's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's get one more that's non those things. So we got a math class. I don't know any of the statistics classes or any of the other math classes actually at the school. I don't really know too many of the classes at the school. So I shall say, oh, I'll just put it a VB class that I sometimes teach, COP 1332. And this one is on the Intro to VB Programming side. Okay, so that gives me 10 classes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to hit my save. All right, so remember, this is now one table. Okay, now from what I've put down now, you might say, okay, so why do I need to create a students table? Why not put the students that are taking, let's say, Intro to Computers right here? So just think of this if I had now more fields. See, this column here could be another field, this another field, this another field, this another field, this another field. So pretend I have a field called class 1. No, not class 1, student 1, okay? Because I already have class. So student 1. And let's just say I type Jane Doe. But then let's say this class has 30 students. Well, I can't put it down here because then for the second student, because this is for the next class. So then what would I have to have? I'd have a class 1, a class 2, a class 3, a class 4, a class 5, and maybe a class 6, because some students take up to 6 classes. But of course, some students only take 1. So you see the difficulty, plus classes have nothing to, students don't officially have anything to do with the classes table when the class is a noun. Class code does have to do with class name, because the class name is associated with that class code. Students we would do by creating what we call a join table. Okay, so this is one reason we keep things small like this. All right, so now let me go ahead and create another table. So I'm going to click on the create, and under create in Access, there's table design and table. And again, I mentioned if you don't do anything by default, it's going to be table. Okay, that's where the first one came into, and then I told you I was going to go over to the design view. The table design is where I normally like to start. So I'm going to go to this one, and now I'm going to put, for the first field here, I'll say student ID. Okay, and this one I'm going to say is auto number, and I'm going to say primary key for students table. Okay, so remember a little while ago I said that if we use auto number, we don't assign the number, meaning we will not assign the student ID values. Access will assign them. The first student is going to be auto number 1. The second student I enter will be, his or her number would be 2. The next one, his or hers would be 3, etc. If I enter 30, then there will be from 1 through 30. If I enter 3002, it'll be from 1 to 3002. So auto number makes it easier to, they automatically create the values for the fields, but they also do it in a sequential manner. Okay, so we wouldn't want to do this for most things, but to demonstrate, it makes it easy to do for certain things. Okay, so student ID. Then I'm going to say F name. Okay, that should be short text, and obviously that's first name of student. Okay, then I'm going to put MI, and that'll be short text, middle initial, and this is going to be an optional field. And then L name, that'll be that, and this will be obviously last name. Okay, so primary key is required, first name is required, middle initial is optional, last name is required. Now, I could put for students really a lot of information. Like for sure, we'd want to know their cell phone. For sure, we would need their address 1, their address 2, their city, their state, the zip, most likely email, and a whole bunch of things. But I don't want to go crazy on it. But I do want to put a couple things that I then might be able to use when I'm doing queries. Remember, queries are questions. So I'll put major, meaning what is their major? What is students' major? And I'll put this is also optional. Okay, and then city, and this is city where student lives. City where student lives. Okay, I want this one to do certain, like I said, when I'm asking a couple of questions of the database, I'll definitely want to do by city. See how many students are Homestead versus how many are Kendall versus how many are Pembroke Pines or whatever. Okay, all right. So now, this is a second table. I haven't saved it yet. So right now it's called table 1. But remember I told you, everything I do in Access requires it to be saved. So within the database, which is called Access Example DB, within that, then I have classes. And now this one I'm going to be naming in a minute or two students. Okay. But first, I want to go down here and look at these fields again. All right, so student ID, I want to make this the primary key. So I'm going to right click on it and just choose primary key. Alternatively, you can click, as long as you're in the field, and click primary key right here. Again, normally when I do these videos, I demonstrate things 1, 2, or 3 different ways. You can do them whichever way you want. But remember, when you're doing your trainings, that's the key. Whatever the training provider wants you to do, that's what you need to do, because that's what the test, when you're doing the access exam, that's what they're going to expect on the exam. Okay, but for now, I'm just going to right click and pick primary key. So primary key means this is the boss field out of all these other fields. So if I want to relate this table, which is going to be called students, to classes, then I relate the 2 primary keys. In the classes, if you remember, if I go back to the other view on it, where am I? When I go to design view, you'll see class code is the primary key. So if I want to relate class code and student ID in another, if I want to relate, these 2 tables, I'm going to have to take the primary key from this one and the primary key from this one and put them in a 3rd table, right? And that's also what we're going to do. All right, but anyway, for now, so first name. Now, yeah, some people have long first names. I'm just going to make it 15, okay? And I have to tell you one thing. Remember, I said again, the reason I don't want to use 255 is because same reason I said it on the other one. I can only store a total of 2 gigabytes of data on one access file. But even with that, okay, you don't want to waste data, because the bigger the file is, the harder it is to save, and the harder it is to share, the harder it is to send to other people, especially if you're doing it via email and whatever else, right? So we should always be efficient. There's no reason, just because the default values are 255 for every one of these things, like middle initial, that's going to be 1 character, right? Most first names are less than 10. Now, some maybe 13, 14, yes. So anyway, I'll make it 15, all right? I also want to make this a required field. Students have to have a first name, so I'm going to make that one yes. By the way, I double-clicked it rather than just do anything else here. I didn't tell you that the last, when I did the classes properties over here. So any value that's what I call a Boolean. It means it's either true or false, or yes or no. Means you can only pick one or the other. Like if I do this drop down arrow over here, you're going to see the choices are only yes or no. Well, if I'm already in yes, if I double click it, boom, boom, it'll pop to no. If I double click it again, boom, boom, it'll pop back to yes. Okay, so it's required. So allow 0 length, no. But normally I just double click this way. Okay, all right. I also want to put a caption, because this one just says F name. Now, a lot of people know what F name is, but a lot don't. So I'm going to type out first space name. Okay, so that's all I need for this one, because it's already required. Now, in middle initial, I want to change the field size to 1, because it's either 1 or it's 0. And this one for sure will be required no, which means allow 0 length yes, because not everybody has a middle initial. Okay, I do, but lots and lots and lots of people, especially in South Florida, do not have middle initials. Okay, all right, so caption, yeah, MI doesn't tell me enough. So middle initial, all right, so that one's done. Then L name down here. So again, for caption, I'll put last space name. For field size, now here, there's a lot of cultures that use, like especially when a woman gets married, a young lady gets married, she may inherit, that the guy that she's marrying may inherit her spouse's last name, but sometimes they have a dash and their original surname, or their original surname dash, then the new name. I don't know how it would work, but either way, 25 is not enough based on that. Okay, and also some people, again, some cultures have names like duh space la space and then something else, right? So a lot of things. So excuse me, I'm going to put this one as 50, just because there could be a lot of things. Actually, 50 is too much. I'll say 35. All right, so 35. All right, because again, I don't want to waste space, but if I have even one student who can't fit with the 35, it means the character or characters that are beyond 35 won't be represented. And I think everybody, like if you are running a business and you send something to a a customer, and that customer has a last name, and your database is not storing the whole last name because you're limited to 35 characters, and that person's maybe is 37 or 38 for whatever reason, then they would not be happy thinking that their last name is not important. So make sure you have enough space is my point. All right. Is it required? Of course it's required. So double click it. Allow zero length? No way, because it's required. So double click that to know. All right. Okay. Major. So I teach in NTech. So NTech is 5, but business, right? Could be whatever. Literature, I guess, is a major. Social sciences, maybe a major. There's tons of majors. I'll just get rid of the last 5 and make it 25. I think 25 gives us ample, but I'm going to make it optional because not every student, especially in the first year of school, knows what their major is going to be. And some, even though they have a major, they sometimes change it. So I'll just say, no, it's definitely not required. So I want to allow zero length, yes. And so I don't need anything else. Don't need a caption because it already says major, right? And then city, similar to last names, there are some cultures where a city may have 3 or 4 different words. All right, so I'm going to make it. I'll use the same 35 I use for the other thing, and I am definitely requiring a city. So yes, and I'll double click zero length to make it no. Caption, I don't need a caption because city stands for city. All right, so I'm going to save that, and now it's going to say, wait a minute, you haven't saved this yet. It's called table 1, so it's going to make me really save it. Yeah, I want to call this students. Okay. So now I have 2 tables, classes and students. They're both over here in the all access objects. All right. I haven't done much, but I did a little bit. Like in the classes, if I go look at the classes and I go back to the other view, you'll see I have 10 records. I want to put in 10 students as well. Okay. I probably should have picked some of my current students, but I didn't think of that before I did this. So I'll just double click on students. And unfortunately, that means I'm going to have to just make names up. Okay. So I'll make up some famous people. See, that one is about there. I just want to make these wider. Remember, I told you when you use captions, like I put first space name, middle space initial, even though that's not quite still fitting, even though it's only going to be 1 character, but I'd like people to see what it is. Last name can take up quite a bit, so I'll move more. Major can take up quite a bit, I'll move more. City can be quite wide depending, so I'll move it wide. All right, okay. Now, but here where it says new, remember this is an auto number field. I'm going to try to type the number 1 just to show you that I can't do it. I'm typing now 1, 1, 1. Now 1 on my keypad. It doesn't let me. And the answer to why it doesn't let me is that it's an auto number field. So when I type the first name of the first person, this will automatically, right when I type the first letter, this new will be gone and it'll say 1. Okay, and I'll put myself as the first. See how it says 1? Right when I said type J, it said that. My middle initial is J. My last name is Maloney. And my major was information technology. My city is Pembroke Pines. Okay. Now, for my second one, whoops, I don't put that again. I tab. I'll say Tiger. I won't give Tiger a middle initial. Woods. His major, I'll say, was golf course management. And I think he lives in Stewart. Say Stewart. Okay. Now I'm going to say, let's see, I don't know too many people. I just said I know a lot of people. I'll pick one of the many. No, I'm just going to come up with names. Okay, instead of talking about them. So I'll say Adam. I'll give him H. And I'll say Hadwin. He happens to be a golfer, actually a Canadian golfer. But anyway, I'll say his major was finance. I think he lives in Phoenix. He has his summer home in Canada, yes. All right, now let's go and put some people that nobody would know. So I'll just say Ted T. Trumpet. Oh, not, I don't want, no. Ted T. Tobelson, something like that. Okay. And remember I said major is going to be optional, so I'll skip it. I also told you though that everything else is required, like city is required. So watch, I'm going to hit tab without putting in a city and watch what it does. See, you must enter a value in the students.city field. Students is because I'm on the students table. City, this is the field. So I say okay, and I have to type a city here. If I would have skipped first name, it'd say the same thing. It'd bark at me and say, you must enter a field here because students.first name is required. Okay. It wouldn't do that if I don't put a middle initial, like for Tiger, I didn't do that. All right. Okay. So for this person, I want to put some now, obviously for Homestead and a couple in Florida because, or South Florida for MDC, because that's what this is all about. So here I'll say Ginger. I'll skip that again and say Snaps. Ginger Snaps. We'll say her major is NTech. Excellent. Way to go, Ginger. Okay. And I'll say she also lives in Homestead. Okay. Then we'll go here to Ann A. And I'll say Adams. Okay. And I'll say her major is math. I'll say she lives in, let's see, what's that called just north of Homestead? Woodland. Redland. Okay. And then after Ann, I'll say Felicia. I'll skip Felicia for that, and I'll say Forbes. I'll say her major. I'll put another math. No, let's put another NTech. Okay, and I'll say that Felicia lives in. I want 2 or 3 with the same places, so I'm going to say Redland again. Okay. All right. Now let's go down here and say Frank. G. Edwards. Okay, we'll say Frank's major is finance. I won't have too many majors, but I'll have at least 2, with 2 or 3 or whatever. And we'll say Frank lives in Florida City. Now, number 9. Okay, we shall say Cindy. And here we'll say Lou. And we'll say Cindy's major is, oh, I should have said undecided to make him pick one. But anyway, I'll just say it's not chosen. And I'll say Cindy Lou lives in Homestead as well. Okay. And then number 10, let's see, how many men do we have? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 women. So let's have a woman named Haley H. Mills. Haley's major, we shall say, is NTech. We'll say she lives in Kendall. All right, so now I'm going to save this. All right, so save this. So I have 2 tables, okay? I have classes, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Sorry, I should have said this one. I have students, okay? So student ID is the primary key. Access is assigning the numbers. You notice it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. If I type another one, it's got this new, right? I can't type it. Like if I type, see, it won't let me. But if I type right here, it will then put the number 11 right there, okay? But anyway, so I have 10 students. I have 10 required entries in the first name field, okay? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 optional entries in the middle and in the MI field, because technically it's MI and this is F name. And I've got 10 required entries in the L name field. And I have 3, 6, 7, 8 optional entries in the major field. And I have 10 required entries in the city field. Okay. All right. So save that. And I already saved this, but I'll save it again. All right. So now that is creating an Access database at its most rudimentary, meaning its most basic level. 2 simple tables. But you could see that conceivably I could have 100 or 200 classes. For sure, Homestead, or not Homestead, but let's say Miami-Dade College has at least 300 class names, class codes, at least 300. I just picked 10, right? There may be 500 or 600. I don't know. So then for each class code, there is a class name, right? And then I know that I think the numbers I saw when I go to mdc.edu, when I went there the other day, I think it was 54,800 or so currently enrolled students. So 54,000 plus students, and I only picked 10. So obviously, I not only could have had dozens, but I could have had hundreds, I could have thousands, I could have tens of thousands of students taking classes at the Homestead campus, the Kendall campus, the North, the Padrone, the West, the MDC Online, the Hialeah, and the Medical, and the, is that all? North, and the North, okay? All right, so anyway, those are what we've got, all right? Okay, now, I want to close these tables. So I can right click, okay, and individually close, or I can right click and choose close all, which will close both. I'll say close all. Now, if I have not saved classes, or I have not saved students, let me show you, it says students in a while, and I do close all, if something has changed, it'll prompt me to say, do you want to save? That means something has changed. So I'll say close all. It wouldn't have done it if something needed to be changed, or if I made a change, you know, it would alert me that I made a change. Are you sure you want to ignore the change? All right, so I have two classes, right? Now, I want to show you how to create a query. And what is a query? A query is a question off the database, okay? So I go to create. Here are tables, here are queries, and after a while we're going to do forms, okay? Do one form anyway, and then a whole bunch of reports. I'll do one report. I'm not going to be doing macros and code, although this is really good for an advanced class, but since I only have the one advanced class and I can't use projects, then you wouldn't need to use Visual Basic or class modules or macro. Well, technically I can make a macro, but it'll maybe make it a bit too difficult. If it's in any of the training exercises for the advanced class, then I will show you guys how macros work. All right. For everyone else, I don't think it'll show up. But anyway, so I've got classes and I've got students, and I want to create a query now. So query, there's query wizard, which means, you know, it builds the query based on what fields I put in and whatever else. So it's prompting me for information and I do it. Query design is more manual. You do it yourself, and that's what I want to do. I'm going to create a query myself. Now, when you clicked, when I clicked the query design, you notice all these popped up too up here. This is if I want to make a particular, these are fancier queries. So for sure in the advanced class, I'll be doing stuff with updates, with appends, with make tables, probably with crosstab. In the intro class, I probably won't be doing any of these because the material for chapters 1 through 4 probably won't include any of that. But if it does, again, then I'll help you guys on it in the trainings. All right. Okay. So when you open up a query in design view, you're at this view again, the view that I can't then make larger, unfortunately. So if I want to do what I want, I could make it bigger here though, and see what that will do. Maybe that'll make it slightly bigger. Maybe. Anyway, so I got to find out what I want to do with this query. So on the right side are my add tables. I want to put both tables in this state up here, and then I'll double click on students, and then it's going to populate next to it. All right, so double click on classes, boom, boom. I could also drag, by the way, like if I want, I can just drag students over and drop it there. So it doesn't really matter, okay? Now this one, the students, has a little bit more data, so I want to pull this down so I can see the fields, okay? All right. So now I have both fields, both tables here, and I want to find out what logical query might we have with the information I just provided in the classes table and the students table. So if this was a face-to-face class, obviously you'd be talking to me about this, but it's not. So I'll pretend one of you says, well, I want to see all the classes that you're offering. That makes perfect sense, right? So how would I do it? Well, do you want just the class code or do you want the class name? Like if I just want the class name, I double click class name and boom, boom, it populates down here. Everything down here is things that you want on in your query. So watch, if I run the query, once I did that, I put a field down here and it tells me it's from the classes table and the field name is class name. So I double click this one and see it's got field next to it. So what's the other field for this one? Well, class code. So if I do the drop down, you'll see class code is there. Okay. And then the table is classes, right there. Well, if I do the drop down arrow here, you'll see the only other choice is students. Okay. So, but this is how queries are done. And this is a very simple query, but it's going to have 10 results and it'll be each class name. So I'll run it. Boom, 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 boom. And you might say, I'm not sure, Professor, because there's 100 of those. Why are there 100 of those, Professor? So that's where we talk about bad data, garbage in, garbage out. If any of you are accounting majors, that's called GIGO or JIGO, garbage in, garbage out. What it means is, if you just actually look at it first, you see from intro to computers to advanced desktop, that's 2. College algebra, that's 3. Intro to speech, that's 4. English 1 is 5. English 2 is 6. A+ operating systems is 7. A+ hardware is 8. Intro to C++ is 9. Intro to VB is 10. And then it goes back to intro to computers. So what it did is it put out the 10 class names I actually have, okay, down to intro to VB. Then it started over intro to computers and it did it again down to intro to VB. Then it started over again and then went down to intro to VB again. Then it started over again. So the way it works is it gives you for all the results and on the tables multiplied by each other. It's called a Cartesian product. If any of you remember that from high school algebra, it means basically an iteration of everything against everything. So in this case, because there's 2 tables, there's 10 records in the classes table, there's 10 students in the students table. So 10 times 10 is 100, and that's why it's listed out here 100 times. If you look way down here, that's 1 of 100, okay? But that's no good. So how could I fix it? Let's go back to the view, the other view, okay? Now, if I get rid of students, okay, so let's just say remove the table, and now I run it, now it's only going to show 10, okay? It's only going to show 10 records, and this is the accurate one. Why? Because if I go back over here again now, in this table, the classes table, I have 10 records. See, it's when I had the second table that it assumed, remember I said it would be an iteration of everything from one thing against everything in the other. So that meant 10 here, 10, there are 10 classes times the 10 students. So basically what it means is that every student would be assigned to every class. Watch, I'll do that one now. So let me go add the students again. Okay, so now they're in it again. And let's say I want to know the class name. And this time I'll say I also want to know the class code, but I also want to know the student's first name and the student's last name. Okay, now what's going to happen when I click to run this time is I'm still going to get 100 records because I do have 10 classes and I do have 10 students. So it's going to do that iteration where it's going to automatically assume that every class has every student and every student has every class. Cartesian product. All right, watch when I run it. Boom. So shows intro to computers, John Maloney. Advanced desktop, John Maloney. Down to intro to VB, John Maloney. Then intro to computers, Tiger Woods. Down to intro to VB, Tiger Woods. Then intro to computers, Adam Hadwin. Down to intro to VB, Adam Hadwin. Then Ted Dobelson. Same way, intro to computers, down to intro to VB. Then Ginger Snaps, intro to computers, down to intro to VB. Then intro to computers for Adams, down to intro to VB. Then intro to computers, Felicia Forbes, down to intro to VB, Felicia Forbes. Then intro to computers, Frank Edwards, down to intro to VB, Frank Edwards. Then Miss Cindy Lou. Intro to computers, Cindy Lou. Intro to VB, Cindy Lou. And then Haley Mills, intro to computers, Haley Mills, down to intro to VB, Haley Mills. So that's all 10 students and all 10 were given every class. But is that true? I mean, it's true that every student was assigned every class, but only in the junk sense, because not one student was assigned to one class. Nobody was assigned to any classes because I haven't done it. So this is called a junk query. So what I'm going to do now is close this query, okay? And it's going to say, do you want to save it? Oh, yes, I do. I want to call this junk query. Junk query. No spaces. You can put spaces, but again, you don't need to, and I'm just going to call it that. So it's a junk query because there's no good information in it. And now all access objects over here has 2 tables, and now it's got 1 query. Okay. Now I want to get another query, and actually I'm going to get 2 or 3 more queries. This is going to go on a long time. It's not easy to do access. I mean, in terms of just doing without showing you things. So this is a junk query. Why? Because it's a Cartesian product. The real why in access database terms, if you're a database administrator or a database analyst or a database, say junior administrator or whatever else, is that we need what's called a join table, but we also need to have relationships. Okay. So first I'm going to start with creating a join table. So a join table is going to be created by taking the, let me just go back over to the design view. Okay. Okay, so I'll just say no. So what it's just basically saying is I got to close this thing down. Okay, now I have this one open and I want this one open. And in classes, I want to again show you the design view. So class code is the primary key. And in students, I want to show you the design view. And again, student ID is the primary key. So I want to create a new table with student ID as one field from the students table. And class code is another field from the classes table. Okay, that's what I want to do. To do that, I'm going to have to, at some point, shut these 2 tables down. But for now, I'll just leave it open and say I want to create another table. So create table design again. Okay, so what fields do I want? I said class code because that's the primary key. Now remember when it was a primary key, but I said I'm not going to use auto number. I was going to use text, short text, okay? Because I said it's less than 255 characters, but it's alpha and numeric. So I'm going to call this one though now foreign key from classes table, right? So a foreign key means a primary key when it was in the other table. And now I'm bringing that primary key over here as a foreign key. As a foreign key, it's not the most important field, but it's one of 2 if I'm using 2, meaning I'm using 2 separate primary keys, but as foreign keys. All right. So class code, this will make sense or hopefully when I demonstrate it to you, and then you can always ask me questions in class, right? All right. So foreign key from that one. Then I want student ID. And student ID, remember, was auto number. Now here I can't use it as auto number because then the way I enter the students is the way their numbers are going to be assigned. And that's dangerous because you'd never get the same makeup. So what I want to do is make this one a number. Number and auto number are the same thing, meaning they're both numbers. They're both numeric fields, okay? But this one, I get to assign it the number, where auto number I don't get to. So this is called foreign key from students table. All right. Now I want to make the class code the primary key and the student ID the primary key. So it's called a composite primary key, meaning there are 2 fields in the table. And these are the only 2 fields in this table, by the way, but they're both going to be the primary key. So I'm going to click up here in class code in this gray area. Then I'm going to hold my shift key in and push the same gray area to the left of student ID. Okay. See, now they're both selected. I'm going to right click and choose primary key. Okay. And you see that both have a primary key, or both have the key now. And cumulatively, that means they are a primary key. All right. So why did I do this? All right. I want to be able to put students in these classes. Okay. In the classes listed here, meaning these classes. Okay. And I want to be able to put students, meaning these students, in the same classes. So I'm creating a table now, and think of this table, again, I said a join table, yes, but let's pretend that the students table actually had 54,000 students. Like I said, Miami-Dade College has about 54,000 and some odd students. And I'm for sure guessing we have at least 500 or 600 classes. We may actually have even more than that. But in the very least, we have, 200 or 300 for sure, right? So I'm just assuming that 10 students and 10 classes out of the thousands and tens of thousands that we have are in the classes that we picked. Okay, so what I want to do now is I made it a primary key. I'm going to save my table. This one I got to name it as well. And this one, I'm going to use the first name of both. So I'm going to say students, classes. So students from this table, and then call this one classes. And the reason I do that is because join tables, we normally want to let everyone know what they are. And normally if you see the two words students, classes, and this one is called classes and this one's called students, anybody that works on databases and say, oh, okay, so this is a join table for students, classes, that's all. So I'm going to say okay. So now you see I have 3 tables, okay? And I have 1 junk query. Now, if I put in any information in this table now, I'm going to go to datasheet view to do it, right? Here's the datasheet view. Make this one 18 again, make it big. So this one here is the datasheet view showing who is taking which classes, okay? Now, the only problem with me doing it at this point is I have no rules, okay? And you might say, so what do you mean, Professor, no rules? Well, look over here in the classes table. These are the only classes I've got, okay, 10 classes. But over here, if I put class code GHJ2345, does GHJ2345 exist? No, no, it does not, okay? If I put student ID, let's say 11, does that exist? No, but look, it's going to take it, okay? So now I got GHJ2345 class code, which doesn't even exist. Look, here's the classes. Nothing with a GHJ, nothing with a GHJ. Students, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but I don't have 11. So bad information here in the class code, bad information here, okay? So that's why this is no good until we make some rules, okay? The rules would be to make sense of what we've done. So what I'll do just to get out of it for now is put one good student number. You know, it's 1 through 10. So this one here is for myself. John Maloney is the name of that one. And I'll put the CGS 2108, okay, in terms of the class. All right. So that's a class code and that's a student ID, and they're both good. All right. Now I'm going to save this. Okay, save it. All right. Now if I look at students' classes, you know, from over here, you see that's all the information in it. But now I want to put rules in place where if I type a class code that doesn't exist, that access won't let me do it, okay? And if I put a student ID that doesn't exist, meaning there's only 1 through 10, so if I type 11 again, it'll bark at me, and bark means it won't let me do it, okay? And if I type CGS 2107 down here, it won't let me do it. Okay, so how do I do that? So first of all, I got to close all these things. So I right click on this one and say close all. Okay, again, had I made a change to anything before I did close all, then Access would prompt me and say, you changed something here. Do you want to save it? And then you'd make the decision, yes or no, based on if you know what you did, you know, that you did not save. Okay, all right. So I now want to create what's called relationships. So remember I said, let me put my, actually I was going to have a, so I said databases that use SQL, structured query language, are RDBMS databases. That's relational database management systems. So what's the very first word? Relational. Relational deal with relationships. And that's in this database tools area. Okay, so I go into database tools from my ribbon, and then I click on relationships. Okay, and similar to when I did the query, on the right side are my 3 tables: classes, students, and students' classes. Excuse me. I want to create relationships between these 3 tables. Okay, so I can double click or just single click and drag. This time I'll just double click on all of them. So double click, boom, boom, double click, boom, boom, double click, boom, boom. All right. So I have all 3 tables in the relationships window. All right. The way I normally do it is I put the primary, the composite table lower than the other tables. Okay. And in the middle. You don't have to, but that's what I do. And I'm going to move this over here. that. All right. And I'll make this thing lower, even though I don't need to, just to make it match up with that thing over there on the right. All right. Okay. So I want to now create a relationship between class code in classes and class code in students' classes. I then want to create a relationship between student ID in students and student ID in students' classes. Why? Because I told you a minute ago when I showed you the students' classes that right now it let me put, if I wanted to, that FJK2345 or whatever, and it was letting me put in student ID 11 even though they don't exist. Okay, so before I can do anything in relationships, I got to always have every table closed. So I'm going to close that one again, but I went back to remind you of what I had just done. Okay, so I can create a relationship between the classes table and its primary key class code with students' classes, which is where I'm manually assigning students to classes. So I would then put the class code here, okay? And then I would create a relationship between student ID, the primary key of the students table, and student ID, the foreign key in students' classes. I do it by single clicking and dragging, holding the mouse in, dragging down. It tells me I can't drop it right here because it's already in that table, so you can't drop it. It won't let me drop anywhere where it's a non-table, so I can't drop it anywhere else except in a table. This one I can drop it in. This one I can drop it in. I can't drop it in its own, and I can't drop it outside of the tables, but I can drop it in a table. So I want to drop it. This is class code. Remember, I dragged class code. That's why it's got that orangey, pinkish, whatever background. So I want to drop it on top of class code, but I could drop it on top of student ID, okay? You can't drop it on top of nothing because this means we're in relationships and we're creating a relationship. So you can't create a relationship between class code in the classes table and nothing in the students' classes. You could create a relationship, even though it'd be wrong, to student ID in the students' classes, but that would be wrong because class code can never match up with student ID. So you always do it with the right one. So class code to class code. And once I release the mouse now, watch what happens. See, now it says, okay, what do you want to do? And this is called the edit relationships dialog box. So it's telling me, sort of like how I told you how Excel's always thinking. This is now Access always thinking. Access is saying, I think you want to create a relationship, okay, between the class code field in the classes table, okay, class code field in the classes table. So this here is this, okay, with class code field in the students' classes table. And I say, yes, that's what I want to do. But you don't create it first. First, you look at these things. Then the first one says, enforce referential integrity. I want to do that. What enforce referential integrity means is if any information about class code ever changes in the primary key in its parent table, this one, the classes table, then make sure that those, oh, sorry, wait, I apologize. This is enforce referential integrity. This one is saying, do not allow a class code from classes to be put into a class code in students' classes if the class code in students is wrong. In other words, this is the primary, so everything from this one are the only choices these people in this table can make. So here, remember, I have class codes. Let's do it with students first, and then I'll come back because it'll be easier to explain. Pretend this is now, actually, I'll just go into students. So student ID, click and drag on top of student ID, okay? Same thing here where Access is now thinking, and it's asking us a question. It says, I think you want to relate student ID from the students table with student ID from the students' classes table. Yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what you should say. Yeah, that's what I want. So you say, I want to enforce referential integrity. What this means is, do not allow me to put a student ID number like 11, as an example, in this table, which is what I just tried to do a few minutes ago, remember? Well, I mean, I did do it, but technically I said it would be marked as wrong if I did these things. And so that's why I'm now coming back to show it to you. So in other words, it will not allow me to put any record in this table. This is called the join table, unless that record appears in its primary field in the original tables. Okay, so student ID, student ID. In this case, think of it again. On the left where it says students and student ID, that's student ID 1 through 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Over here, I only have 2 in there. First one is 1, and the next one was going to be 11. Well, 11 wouldn't match up, so it wouldn't work. It would bark at me. And again, bark at me means it would say, you have a record that does not match with the parent table. Okay, that's what it would say. So I want to do this. So I say, yeah, I definitely want to do that. Good job. Good job, Microsoft Access relationships. Good job. Then I say, do I want to cascade update related fields? So in this one, this means if I ever change, like let's say these student ID fields, or perhaps something else in the students table, okay, like their first name, well, let's say their last name, more logically, might change. Their major might change. Their city, where they live might change for sure. So if anything changes in this table, cascade, meaning allow changes in any other table that has that field so that they would match up. Okay, so enforced referential integrity says only allow student IDs in this table if they already exist in the students table. And cascade update related fields says if anything changes in the parent table up here, cascade those changes to the, in this case, what we'd call child tables. Okay, now this is one, cascade delete related records, which I always tell people do not ever touch. It's dangerous. And you may not believe this, but I promise you, way back in 2002, when John Maloney was a younger professor, and I was teaching at that time Office 2000. And I said, and I used to teach a lot of database classes, especially back then. I said, it's dangerous to delete records because what if somebody needs a copy of that record, whether it's an employee after the fact, meaning a year or two after they leave, or you're audited by, in our case, SACS. I don't even know what it stands for anymore, but Association of Colleges and Schools. So it's something, Association for Colleges and Schools, but they're the accrediting body. So we need to keep our records. But if I do cascade delete update related, cascade delete related records here, what it would mean is if I change something, or in this case, delete a student ID in the primary table, the original table, in other words, cascade, meaning delete the record everywhere through every other table. That is dangerous. I said to Microsoft, I mean, I'm a Microsoft fan, but this makes no sense. They said, no, I understand. We understand what you're saying, but this allows you to delete things if you need to. I said, no. You don't ever want to let somebody make a mistake that might literally cause them to lose a record, and there would be zero knowledge of that record anywhere. But they said, no, it's okay. So don't ever put anything there, okay? And then you want to make sure it says one-to-many. One-to-many means that in the students table and in the classes table, you can only have one of each of the field values next to a primary key, meaning the key. So in other words, there can only be one of each class code here. So if you remember my classes table, I can't do it right now, but if I double clicked on the classes table when I'm outside of here, remember there's one CGS 1060C, one CGS 2108, one MAT 1033, one ENC 1101, one ENC 1102, one COP 1334, one COP 1332, one speech 1117, and one whatever else. Oh, my CGS 1540, CGS 1560, and my CTS 1131. But one, okay? But down here in the students classes, there can be thousands of students taking the same class. This is where you get into the point where you're filling classes up, in other words. So this is good, all right? Good. But it's one record of it up here. So let's say CGS 1060 for this time. And then down here, though, there might be 12,300 students taking CGS 1060. So down here, you could have thousands of repeats. Yes, that was fine, but you can only have one original. Okay, so that is what that also means, one to many. And over here, you can only have one of each student ID. Remember, I had 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But down here, one student, so one student ID number 1, as an example, he, in my case, because it's mine, could be taking 2, 3, 4, 5 classes. So here you can have the many. Up here, only the one. So it's called a one-to-many relationship, all right? Create. When I click the create, you notice a 1 appears at the top right side, and this is the Greek infinity sign that looks like the sunglasses. That's the Greek infinity is what that really is, and it just means many. So many student IDs can be in students' classes, yes, because this is our actual class list where students are registered, but each student ID can only appear one time in the students table, okay? Similarly, class code, so now I click on it and drag down, same way, release it on top of class code. Again, in the edit relationships, verify. Access is saying, I think you want to relate the class code from classes with the class code from students' classes. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Again, I want to enforce referential integrity. What this means is if the class code up here changes, so like CGS 1060C, if it's not called Intro to Computers and Computer and Applications anymore, maybe they change it to, information management software applications or whatever, okay? Then if it is changed up there, cascade those changes this enforce again. All right, if you do not have a class that you're entering down here in students' classes, meaning you're entering, let's say, CGS 1061C, well, that's not a class code up here, so don't let you do it. Enforce referential integrity means it has to exist in the parent table, okay? Sorry again. Now, the next one is cascade update related. This is where if CGS 1060C, maybe they change it to CGS 1061C at some point, okay? If they do, then cascade the changes down to every table that is associated with the first table, okay? And again, we do not want to cascade delete related records. And again, we want one to many, meaning one at the top, many in the bottom. Create. Same thing, we got a one, we got a many. So now I hit save. Okay, save. So I've saved my relationships. Now I close them. Now watch. So over here in my classes, you see here, this is the original classes. This is the original students, still all the same. And this is my students classes where so far I only have one student taking one class. Now here I want to have a whole bunch, but I can't make too many because I got so many students and so many classes. But I do know that, like, I'll just go this way. I'll just make another CGS 2108. Okay, so remember what I said on making the relationships, that you can have in the students' classes, you can have more than one. See, this is more than one of the same record. But in the original, where it was called classes, you can only have one CGS 2108, right? That was the one side of the relationship. The many, which I said is the Greek infinity sign, which look like sunglasses, that means down here, yeah, you can have 212 students taking that class this term, right? Okay, and now I'm going to say, though, like, you can't have the same student signed up for the same class twice. So if I bark it and hit this one, it's saying, no, you can't do that because that's duplicate values. Because you can't have, remember, John Maloney is a student ID 1. So John Maloney can take CGS 2108, yes, but he can't take it twice, okay? So do not let me take it twice. So change it to, let's say, student ID 2. Then let's say one more for CGS 2108. And this one I'll say is student ID 5, okay? Then come down here, and I'll say CTS 1131. That's my advanced desktop on my A+ hardware, which is, gosh, what are we called officially? Computer Essentials and Support. Computer Essentials and Support. So I'll put me in this one, and then I'll also put me in CGS 1560 because that's most people take those two classes together to try to get the certification. So I'll put me there as well. And now I want to put one other student in this one with me as well. So CTS 1131, oops, CTS 11. I'll let it be that way. So you'll see it's a mistake in it, but it'll catch it. It won't let this happen. Okay. And this one, I'll say student ID 2 again. So that person's in 2. Now, when I hit tab, it's going to bark at me because this is not valid, that class code. Okay? You cannot add or change a record because a related record is required in table classes. So it's telling me in the classes table, this one requires a related record. but there is no related record because there is no CTS 1113-1. So I say okay, and I fix this now to make it CTS 1131. That works, and make that student fine. Okay. Now I'll do one more set for CGS 1560. Make this one student ID 3, and CTS 1131. Make this one student ID 3. Excuse me. Now we're going to go down to the next one. I'm going to do 20 of these anyway because I want at least 5 students to have 2 or 3 classes. All right. Okay. So we got Matt 1033, 1033, and we'll say student ID. Let's see. So far I got 3. I only have 2. No, I got 2 and 2, 1 and 2, and 3 and 2. So I want to get some of the others. So I got 1, 2, 3, and 5. 5's only in 1 though. I'll put 5 in this class. Okay. And then I'll do this class again, 1033, and I'll put 6 in this class. Then I'll put down here the speech, SPC 1117, and I'll put 6 in that one, and then I'll put the same class again, 1117, and I'll put student ID 7. And this time I'll put a bad student ID, but remember it'll bark at me, okay? So that's 6 and 7 a couple times, 5 a couple times, 3, 2, 1. Oh wait, I don't have any 4s. So let's put in here, let's see, what other classes do we have? We said we had COP 1334. And here I'll put student 44. I meant to put 4, I'll say, okay? But when I tab, it'll bark. Because again, there is no student ID called 44. You see, so when I made those relationships in database tools, relationships, this prevents these kind of mistakes. So then I delete that part, and I only wanted to put 4, so that's fine. And now I'll put the same person is taking COP 1332, so I'll put 4 again. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now I'll put 8, 9, and 10 in just one of the same classes rather than have, no, I want English. ENC 1101. And I'll put the number 8 and ENC 1101, and I'll put 9. So I've got those students in only one class. That'll be enough. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 16 classes and these assignments, okay? So I'm gonna hit my save, all right? Now I'm gonna close all the tables, close all right? Now, remember the junk query. This is the junk query. So what did I put in it? I put class name, class code, first name, and last name. I didn't put student ID, but I could have. I didn't put middle initial or city, but I could have. Right? But for now, I just want to do the same fields. So from classes, I'm going to take class name and class code. From students, I'm going to take first name and last name. All right? And I'm going to create a new query. So create query design view again. And I want to take from tables, classes, students, classes, and students, classes. Okay? And again, I want to make this one pulled down because I don't like having to scroll down this way for fields to see all the fields that are there. So pull that down. And I like the join table at the bottom center and move that one to the right so that they can kind of be more obvious. All right. Okay. So I said I had class code and class name, right? Class code and class name, or did I just have class? I think I had both. Class code, class name, and first name and last name. Okay. I think that's the same fields. Now though, watch when I run it. Boom, boom, boom. Do you see that? So now let's look at this in the big view or bigger view. Okay, so I've got class code CGS 2108. There are 3 students in it. These 3 students are in it. Okay, I can't do them all, but anyway. So CGS 2108 has John Maloney, Tiger Woods, and Ginger Snaps. Then CTS 1131 has John Maloney. CGS 1560 is John Maloney. CTS 1131 also has Tiger Woods. CGS 1560 also has Adam Hadwin. Hadwin, yeah. And CTS 1131 also has Adam Hadwin. Then Matt 1033 has Ginger Snaps and Ann Adams. Speech 1117 has Ann Adams and Felicia Forbes. COP 1334 has Ted Tobelson, and COP 1332 has VB program. So Tobelson is let's say a programming major, so he's taking 2 programming languages. And for English, we just have one student, students taking 1 class each, Frank Edwards and Cindy Liu. Okay, but you see how that didn't let me put in mistakes. Now I could have made a manual mistake and maybe John Maloney wasn't signed up for CGS 1560, but so you can still make a mistake, but you can't make mistakes involving putting in a class code that doesn't exist, or a class name that doesn't exist, or a student that doesn't exist, anything that you're inputting record-wise, okay? So that is that. But now I want to call this a good query, all right? So I want to save this query, so right-click, I'll just hit the save button. To hit the save button is the same thing. I'll just call this one good query, okay? So the good query and the junk query are the same. It's just that the junk one has class name, class code, first name, last name. The good has class code, class name, first name, last name. But the good only has 16 records. The junk had 100 records, which was every student. Okay? All right. So now close them. I want to make another query. Now, so you know that you want to make queries for lots of things, right? So let's, in this case, create a query. Again, I'll do design view, and I'll say I want from tables. And I want that one, and that one, okay? And let's say I want to find out more or less the same things, but I also want to have, oh wait, this one there, sorry. I mean, it doesn't matter, but that's the way I like to do it. So I want to put in, let's say, just this time I'll say class name rather than the class code. Just what is the name of that class, okay? I want to know who's in it, okay? So I definitely want the first name and the last name. Maybe I want the student ID this time too. Okay, but I also want to know which city they live in, what city they live in. Okay, so I've got class name, student ID, and city. Okay, let's also put in class code. What the heck? All right, so now if I run that, okay, so it's all the fields I just picked. All right, but I can look at this and say, wow, that's like still too much information. Or the boss would. The boss might say, I just want to see who's got CGS 2108, or I just want to see who lives in Homestead, or I just want to see who's got intro to speech, or I just want to see Ann Adams records. Okay, all these things can be done with filtering the results based on what we want to find out. All right, so we go back to design view. So this is the datasheet view. Go to design view. Okay, let's say for class code, I only want, so if I do click on criteria down here, my mouse is my mouse, right? So here, but I want to be under criteria. I only want to see, let's say Matt 1033, okay? So I type it as Matt 1033 and then I run it. But when we come back, you're going to see that they put double quotes around Matt 1033. Get rid of that. Okay, so watch, run. Uh-oh, what happened? Uh-oh, what happened? What happened? Matt 1030. Oh, sorry. This is class name. Okay, since that's class code, not Matt, whatever. And I don't remember what I called for the class names. So I'll come over here and do the same thing. So MAT 1033. The field name has to line up with what it's called, right? So class code is what this is. So again, same thing though. When I run it, it'll run it. And you'll see though double quotes grow around that Matt 1033. So now you see Matt 1033 is here. It's the only results, okay? And if I go back to that view, now you see it's got double quotes around it. So I can save this, all right? So I'll just say save Matt 1033 students, okay? And save it that way. So now I have another query, okay? And now let's say if I want all classes but by one student. So let's say I don't care for Matt 1033 now, okay? But I want student last name of Maloney, okay? So I can run it this way and only Maloney results will come up, okay? I can also do this another way. Watch this next way. So I go to design view. So I can also do MAL or just M. I'll say MA and then an asterisk, okay? And then a double quote. So what MA asterisk means is I know the last name begins with MA, but I don't know what letter comes next. I don't know anything that comes next. So you're typing it more or less as Ma, okay? But if there's any students whose last name begins MA, it'll show. And of course, Maloney will show, Right? Maloney begins with M-A. Okay, so I'll save this one as, hello, what happened? Oh, shoot, I already saved that. That's my MAT 1033. I wanted to save it a different way. All right, let's see. Why not let me change that? Let's see. This thing here. Yeah, this is my MAT 1033. Darn it. Oh, well, I want to save it a different way. So let me say file save as and let's see what happens here. Now that's the database. Dang it, dang it, dang it, dang it. So let's say MAT. Yeah, that's there. Go back to design view. And see also they put like. You don't have to type in like. You don't have to put in the double quotes. But what similar to Excel again, where Excel is saying, I think this is what you want to do. Access is more or less saying, I think you're looking for all records that begin with MA, but that you don't know anything else that's in it. So they put a like clause. So they say it's like MA something. You know, that's the interpretation. That's how you read that. But you don't have to type in the like. Okay. And what did I say I wanted to do? Oh yeah, I wanted to put it in as a wildcard character. I'll just, you know what, I'll close it and then I'll rename this one. So that, oh, that was 1033 students. And that's technically not that anymore. So let me get this one out of there. Flip that back to MAT 1033. MAT 033. So that's technically it again. Run it. So now that's MAT 1030. I'll hit the save again. So now it's the way I originally wanted it again. Okay. So now I'll get that one closed and I'll do another one using a criterion. So create one more query and then we're done with queries. Query design, and I want again go to tables. So if they go to anything else, make sure you go back to tables if that's what you want. Classes, students, students, classes. Okay, pull this down here. Pull that down. Pull that down to make it match, even though you don't need to. All right, so here I want, let's just say this one is irrelevant to classes. Now, I still like the idea of the class and everything, so you can kind of see it. But let's say we want first name and last name and city. Okay. If I don't really need these others, actually, I'll get rid of students classes now because I only want this from students. So I'll remove that table and I'll remove classes. Remove. Okay, if I don't remove it, what'll happen is I'm going to get then another junk query because the relationships are gone. So here I want first name, last name, and city. Okay, and now when I run it, it's going to list all the students and their cities. Okay, so now though I want to make it a particular city. So let's see, Pembroke Pines we only have one, Kendall we only have one, Redland we have two, Homestead we have three. So I'm going to say Homestead. All right. So I want to now go back to the design view. And in Homestead, I'll just type Homestead. But remember, if I want it to, like, let me spell it wrong. See, this I type it as Homestead. And this is a good reason why sometimes you want to use a wildcard character. Because Homestead has an E after the T. All right. But I spelled it as Homestead on purpose. So now watch when we run it. There's nothing there. So it doesn't mean it's bad to get no records, because if you don't have a student from Homestead, it would be fine for this to be the result. But obviously, in this case, it's bad because Homestead is not a city that we have. So we come over here and we change that ST or put an E after the Homestead. Then we run it, and now we have that. Okay. But then again, we can go back to that view, and now I can say if I want it, HO, and then asterisk. And so ho asterisk run, and it's still Homestead. Okay. So go back to the view and you can change it to anything else. You can also, if you have a last name, watch this. Let's go look again. So let's say I only want Snaps, and I know for a fact that she lives in Homestead. So I want Snaps, but I don't want Lou and I don't want Tobbleson. I want Snaps. Okay. So go back to the design view. Now go to last name, and here I type SNAPS because I know I've got Snaps and I run it. Okay. And now the only one showing is Ginger Snaps Homestead. Okay. So let's now save this one as Ginger Snaps Homestead students. Homestead students. I'm saying students even though she's the only one. Your snaps, homestead students. Okay, so I'll say that. All right, so that's enough of that. All right, now I want to create, but you see how even with the limited data, limited information I now have, I just showed you how you can get any city you want based on what I'm doing. I also could have changed it. Since I've already saved it, you know, it won't go back that way, but watch. Instead of doing it HO asterisk, I'll do anything, which is asterisk, and then ending though in EAD. So take away the asterisk at the end, and now it's like, I don't know how to spell homestead, but I know it ends in EAD, basically, okay? So then run it, and it's going to be the same thing, see? Because homestead ends in EAD. So if I type asterisk, asterisk means anything, 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 and then after the asterisk EAD, it says, oh, okay, here's an E. Is there an A after it? Yeah, EA. Is there a D after it? Yeah, EAD. So then it's good, and it throws everything into homestead, because there's no other cities that have a EAD as the last three characters, okay? And you can do it yet another way if you want it to. Let's see. So I could say asterisk ME asterisk, meaning I want me in it, but I don't want, I don't whatever else, okay? So let me go back to the design again. And now I'll say asterisk ME and then asterisk. So now it's like asterisk ME asterisk. So the asterisk means I don't care what it begins with. If there's an ME in there, and I don't care what comes after it, as long as there's an ME in it, please let me see the results. And you'll see homestead has an ME. It's the only one that has an ME. So there's lots of ways you can do queries this way to get good results. You can also do a query to put first and last name together. Okay, so here we got first name, we got the city. Let me make a new field. Let's see how to make. Let's see, I'm going to create a field, so I forget how to do it now. Let's see. Forget. I'll say this: full name. This, and I want full name. No, I don't remember actually. Let's see. Full name, and then I would put down here. Oh, let's see. Field. I think. Let me just do full name. Maybe. I'm not sure if that's how it works. No, there's something wrong with it. But then down here, I could say. Let's see. Full name, and I would say first name, F name, plus this plus L name. This part down here would probably be right, but I may have a mistake here. So I haven't played with Access in a while. Okay, here it's telling me now to put one in. Now I don't want to be having to put it in. Let's just put it as full name. Wait, I already did it as full name, right? Full. You know what? I'm not sure. Maybe it's just down here. Let me see. Ah, shoot. Let me just full name. Well, you know what? Maybe it's because I got full name with a space too. Let's do it this way. Full name. That may have been the problem. Full name. Let's see. Colon that. And then F name plus that plus L name. See if that works. I think there's still something missing. No. Nope. But in any event, if it when I do a demonstration of queries, I'll come up with one on it. All right. Okay. So anyway, that will be okay. All right. Just the way it is. That still gives us plenty of that. All right. So now let's save that one again. Now I want to do a form. So up here we have classes, up here we have students, and up here we have students' classes, okay? So normally a database analyst or a database administrator or a junior database analyst or a junior database administrator, whatever the job title they have in the database world, they would never let any employee have access. I shouldn't say access because that's what we're using, access database, have rights to go directly into the tables. Instead, they would only give them a form, and you can then add records to the classes, or add records to the students, or add records to students' classes by going into a form. So I want to create a form based on students. All right. So watch, I just clicked on students here. I'm going to click create, and I want a form. Okay. It's going to let me enter whatever I want to do, but I'm just going to click form, and boom, in a few seconds, it's got a form, and the form has, because I've got a relationship between students and classes, that's why all the records are here. But I'll kind of go through the records and let you see what we're seeing here. All right. So basically, for John Maloney, he has these 3 classes. All right. The outer records on the very bottom down here are for the student ID. The inner records here just goes from CGS 2108 to CTS 1131 to CGS 1560. So it's not doing anything. You can see it, obviously, because it's not many records. So that's no big deal. But if I go down here and I click, then this is the next person. So the second person was Tiger Woods, lists all his stuff, and then the classes he has. Then the next record would be this one. Okay, so Adam Hadwin, then Ted Tobelson, et cetera, et cetera. All right, but I can go to the last record. So this is the last record, which is student ID 10. And then there's one more button next to it. It says new blank record. And it's got a greater than kind of filled in triangle. And then it's got a yellow like new record. So I click on this, and now I'm in a new record. Okay, so watch now. I want to put in a new student. And this record is now going to be number 11. All right, so I go to the view over here for form view. Form view means I want to input a new record. Okay, so remember, you can't type the student ID. You just type the name. Once I type the first letter, it'll say 11 up here. So we shall say Missy, and you see how it's already got number 11 up there? Okay, so I'll say Missy M. Mendez. All right, so Missy M. Mendez. And she is nursing, let's say, and she lives in Kendall. So we'll say we have 2 in Kendall now. I'm not going to put her in any classes yet, but I want to add her to the students table. All right. Now, remember, this is a form. Okay. When I save this, you're going to see what the name of the form is, but now it's record 11 of 11. So I'm going to hit my save button, and it's going to prompt me to save it. And here it's saying students. Well, I already have students as a table. So I want to say students. Yeah, that's fine. But form, or maybe students data entry form. Students data entry form. All right, and I'll say OK. So now I have 3 tables, 4 queries, and 1 form. And this is the 1 form. Hit my save again. Close my form. Remember, Missy Mendez I just added. Close. Okay, close all this stuff. Close all. Now I'm going to open up my students and look at Missy Mendez, number 11. See? So this is where I would let students be at, employees add records, never through the tables, because if they mess up your database, tables are the backbone of the database. So that could kill you, right? So you create a form and only give them access to certain fields in the form. And in this case, it's just that one table. But they, again, are getting it only from a forms perspective. So if they make a mistake, it doesn't go anywhere. Okay? All right, so that's that. Now, in conclusion, I know it's been a long time, but I'm going to create now one report. Normally, reports are like given to the boss because he or she wants to see certain things. And this is where queries are important, because the boss is going to ask you a question. They're going to ask you, well, how many students are in Homestead? Or how many students are in CGS 2108? Or how many students named Mendez do we have? Or how many classes is Missy Mendez taking? Or, any of these questions, right? They can create any question. So the questions are these queries. I only have a few, but I'll just give him or her my good query. So I'll say they want to know how many students are taking classes. Okay, so I'm going to create now a report. Oh, just similar though to selecting students, single clicking on students before I created that form, I should click on good query before I create this report. All right, so I want to create a report based on the good query. All right, so I'm going to, in this case, use report wizard. All right, so report wizard, and you see how in this one, it's already brought up good query with its fields because I had selected good query. But I could change my mind now and say, no, I don't want that. I want to base it on students' classes, in which case its fields come up. Or want to base it on junk query, in which case all of its junk comes up, right? But I said, no, I want it on good query. So click good query again. Now, so I have to, which fields of this query do I want to put in this report? I want them all. So this the greater than, or you can just single click greater than 4 times. I'll just click this one, brings them all over. Next. How do you want to view your data? And then they give you an example of what it looks like. Now remember, I have this is extremely small, so it's not really going to be relevant to switch. Like if I click on here for by students, all it does is flip it to say first name, last name, class code, class name. When it's by classes, it's class code, class name, first name, last name, right? There's nothing to choose from. I mean, these are the 2 choices. I'll just leave it and say, yeah, it's fine. Okay, next. Now, do you want to add any grouping levels? Well, grouping levels would be if these students, in this case, are also, there's something underneath them, that you want to add. And again, we just don't have enough information yet. So I'll just say, no, that's perfectly fine the way it is. Thank you. And then go next. And then it says, well, what about a sort order? Well, again, we don't really have much, but you can click on here. And if you were going to click on a sort order, you'd probably want by last name. So let's just say, well, let's do last name and ascending, starting at A and going up to Z. And then next. And you could do more fields. Like if there's, I said last name, sorry, last name. So if you then wanted to sort after last name by first name, let's say there's 3 Mendez's or 3 Rodriguez's or 3 Williams or 3 whatevers in the class, then you could sort by last name and then the next one by first name. But we don't really have much in this database to do, but I'll just click that anyway and then click next again. Then this one is, well, what about how you want your layout? So they're saying what it looks like. Would you prefer maybe block? Yeah, I don't know what it did differently. Outline? Yeah, I don't know what it did differently. Yeah, stepped is fine. And then or a portrait or landscape, obviously based on what you're going to be printing. I'll say that's fine. And say next. And then it's what title do you want for your report? So here it's classes. I don't know why they came up with classes, but no, this is my query called good query. So I'll say students taking classes, and I'll say March 2022. You try to make some sense of it if you're the boss here. So that, and then I want to preview the report, so finish. And there it is. These are the students, boss, taking classes. Oh, let me see. So in CGS 1560, okay, there's Hadwin and Maloney. Man, Maloney's also though in CGS 2108, but with Snaps and Woods. Oh, and then COP 1332. Wow, there's only 1 person in that? Tobelson, what's going on with our programming class? Oh my God, C++ programming, only 1 person again. What's going on here? Then you call the advisors. Why don't you have more people in our programming classes? And then you say A+ hardware, there's 3 students. Well, why don't you have 6 students? English, how can you have 2 students in English? There should be 2002. Whatever, but right, it's good information. And then you just say save. All right, and that is it. So I'm going to stop my build. I hit my save, and I'll show this in class also, but I'm going to mainly show it via the video. All right, have a great day, and I shall now end my recording.